Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Kalen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. How are you, Sam?
I'm so good today. Thanks.
Why are you so good today, unlike you were yesterday? I'm just kidding.
No. It's been a hard couple months and spring has sprung, it feels like.
It feels like it's starting.
There's crocuses in my garden and daffodils are popping out everywhere. The sun is shining and it makes me feel better. There is such a thing as SADS. As I get older,
yes.
like I never believed in it really because it never influenced me before, but as I get older, it's just like, those dreary months are
they're wearing you.
They wear on
Life
you. And if you have
Canada.
anything else going on,
Yeah.
it just kind of compounds it. So anyway, the sun is out. I'm really not looking forward to the time change coming up in a couple of weeks because it brings us back.
Yeah, it brings us back.
Yeah, well.
You know what's making my day today?
Me?
No.
Oh.
We have an amazing guest, a friend of mine, Diana Gibson. She's the MLA for
Oak Bay Gordon Head.
Oak Bay Gordon Head. Yeah. How are you? Welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's such a privilege to be here today. I'm really glad to be able to sit on your podcast. There's a lot of people that have been on this podcast that I've admired, and I'm excited to be along now on that list.
Oh my God. People admire the podcast.
I know. Your podcast has got quite the reputation.
Well, it's very, it's funny actually, because we don't ever think, like, we don't promote it. We just do it. Like, and I think the authenticity around that is like, there's no preconceived agenda. We just want to have interesting guests, interesting conversations, and hopefully people can learn a little something.
And we're just a couple wild and authentic guys.
Yes, wild
and authentic guys,
So I kind of want to start by, obviously give us a little bit of a background, like kind of like an elevator pitch on who you are, where you've been, and then I can get into some more formalized questions.
Well, I ran for office in 2024, my first time running for anything political. And
anything, you've never had any other office? Or
not a political position,
Wow.
And so I got elected, and then I got put into cabinet with a jobs and economic development and innovation portfolio, which we called JEDI, which I loved. So it was nice. My first ministry is JEDI, which my kid was really impressed by. And then Trump started trade war, so that got really busy really fast, and stopped being a quiet little entry-level ministry to becoming one of our central ministries. But that was I did a trade mission and lots of work around the economy, which as somebody who came out of the business sector was a great place for me. And then in the summer, I was moved into citizen services, where we've got some big challenges in terms of some new innovation that's happening around centralizing a lot of our technology across government, and of course challenges around data and AI and innovation. And so some really big things coming in that ministry.
It's interesting you bring up the AI question, because I think in this day and age, and going on down south, privacy is paramount. Efficiencies and how we're managing, and how the government's responsibility of oversight of this unknown AI sort of component, and the ability for it to kind of take control. Privacy issues are obviously one of them. I know there's an issue with OpenAI and ChatGPT as far as them protecting people's rights and creating the guardrails. I know of this issue around Claude and the U.S. military, and Claude basically came out and said, we're not going to take the contract, and these are the guardrails. Here's the conditions. Like, there can't be unfettered access and control over this. Like, we need to make sure it's ethical and all those things. So that, to me, I was like, okay, what questions are we going to ask? And for my preparation, and as we're lazy and we don't do a lot of fact checking on our data and all that stuff, typically, I downloaded Claude and I asked AI basically, Give me the 5 best questions I can ask you. So one of the things when it talks about your ministry and all the challenges around that is accuracy. So some of the questions we're going to ask you today come directly from Claude. It's AI. And, I'm going to start basically with asking a few questions. Then I want you to say whether it's accurate or not. So if the question isn't accurate, because I also didn't vet whether it was accurate, because it's also important with AI to verify, like double check and triple check that what they're reporting is accurate, because sometimes they make mistakes. So I'm going to open it up with co-founding Canada's largest Indigenous owned consulting firm, the Firelight Group, which you co-founded, became Canada's largest Indigenous owned consulting firm. How does that experience with Indigenous partnership and reconciliation influence your work in government, particularly around economic development?
Well, that's a great question, because right now we've been advancing major economic projects, and we've got, on the majority of the projects on the federal major project list are BC based. And it's because we've been advancing that reconciliation that we can move forward with those projects, and they have the certainty. There's a couple of examples that I love that really jump to mind. One is the Northern Areas Land Use Plan, which has got the environmental groups and the Indigenous nations and the mining companies all together in a very large land use plan, where they decided on the certainty for where the mining is going to happen, certainty where the protection is going to be for environment, and certainly how the nations are going to be partners. And that's how we've been advancing, and we're fast tracking those permits because environment and nations are at the table.
Now, sorry, I just want to because I just want to address an issue that has come up, because there's been some concerns around the recent judgment with land use and Indigenous sovereignty over land, and from my perspective, it has probably been overblown as far as the risks. I mean, if you talk to some other politicians in the world, in British Columbia, they're freaked out about Indigenous rights and losing private property and things like that. How does that mesh into that? Sort of those calculus? Is it overblown? Is it a real risk? Where does it go?
What I can say is that, we've had agreements like in the Haida Gwaii where those private property rights have been protected at the same time as we're following a path to reconciliation. But our premier has said that we'll be revisiting the legislation and the Protection Act in order to ensure that people feel protected, that pathway can be found where those rights and for private property and reconciliation can be balanced, and so that path we're on that path right now, working with consulting stakeholders from municipal, citizens, businesses, and the First Nations, really finding that path.
Sorry, Sam, another follow up, and because I think this is an important timely matter that people are concerned about. So I guess there isn't you're not saying there is no risk. We have to figure out those kind of ideas and guardrails and make sure, is it a true concern or is it not? As far as
the issue, we're appealing the judgment because neither the nation nor the government had asked for the decision that they'd made to include that kind of private property.
Right.
So we are appealing that decision, and we are working to ensure that the legislation protects people.
Okay,
those rights will be protected, and the premier has been really clear in stating that those rights will be protected. So people's property rights are going to be protected.
Right, which is obviously a factor that everybody needs to.
Absolutely.
And I think the other follow up on that, because I think it relates to what the federal government's doing with partnerships with Europe and creating a really safe space for all those concerned parties to work together to freeze up the ability to do things, like by just addressing Indigenous rights and partnerships, and you talk about the mining companies, everybody coming together so that you can actually do business and be free and remove those issues and barriers, right?
That is how BC has become. We have some of the highest private investment right now across Canada. Our economic growth is one of the strongest in Canada. Our jobs growth. And that's because we've done that work. And particularly the mining sector, we've been able to fast track mines and get them permitted in a fraction of the time because they're at the table with the nation and the environmental groups. It's come together with agreements, and then we can really quickly move those forward. Same with our wind projects. When I was in Europe on my trade mission, I was meeting with companies in Europe that want to invest in BC because of our good governance, our reconciliation, and our clean energy. And so these are powerhouse European investors that are coming in, and they're partnering with nations on the ground. We've had 2 calls for new wind and solar, and we're getting wind and solar built, and it's being done with investors and nations. All of them have some nation ownership, and half of them are majority Indigenous owned. That's how we build the future of our economy, is doing it together with investors, nations, and with our clean power.
Does that have any tie-in with the federal government as well? Like, are they at the table equally?
We are certainly working to leverage, and like I said, we're on the project list for the major projects that the federal government's working to fast track. So BC's really at the table with those, but we are working to leverage other investments like our grid, and seeing electricity and grid access and rail as major national building projects at this moment in time. At this, where we've got this tariff war and this uncertainty, those kind of generational investments are things we're working with the feds on.
Yeah, and I think the important piece that I think about too is that people need to understand that other countries' regulations and preparing for thinking about what they need for us to do allows us to open up new trade partnerships, increase wealth, do stuff here. So even when we look at the industrial carbon tax or the industrial carbon pollution, platform. You need that in place in order to actually export products to Europe.
And Australia too.
And
they have border carbon adjustment mechanisms where if we don't do it, then the companies are going to have to do it themselves as they go through trying to engage with those nations. So that's one of the things we've really worked on. And BC is really seen as a player by those, Australia, by the UK, the EU, and South Asia Pacific really see BC as having stepped up in these areas and as a good partner.
With all the new trading partners that you're trying to get, is there going to be a change from, for instance, with our trees, how we just send primary trees down south? We've done that for years, and that's always
value added.
That's always really bothered me. And now that may be changing, and not all of our logs are going to go down to the States, and they may be finding other homes. Are we going to put into place immediately that they have to be at least secondary or tertiarily enhanced before we send them
and I
away?
love that question because I actually wrote a report back in the day called Hewers of Wood that was about how we need to stop extracting and exporting our raw resources, and because the jobs are in the value added.
Yes.
The jobs, the profit margins are so much bigger, the number of jobs is so much higher. And so our province really has been working to do value added in every area of our resources, and ensuring that we're getting a lot of those jobs. And in forestry, we are building a lot of housing, and it's the moment. So we're working to help create platforms where it's easier to move into modular housing, and where we can help support mass timber. And we've really been, rather than mandating it, we've been working to support the industry to move that direction, the manufacturers, the mills to pivot to be able to feed our market and the North American market, or the Canadian market.
Aren't mills closing though because of the past issues that we've had with that? And like, what can that sort of tertiary addition to the industry, can that be mandated or helped or
it's certainly
encouraged?
It's certainly for us, any areas where we can have them help them to pivot into doing more manufacturing and more value added, we have been, and we've got some great examples of that. Like in the Kootenays, there's some folks that have really moved into mass timber, Klishnikovs, and some others that are doing that are moving and doing that pivot and moving into serving super high end European markets too. Like a small place out in Nelson that's using wood and doing value added, and then really selling it at the top end of the market in Europe and stuff. So that's the kind of thing we've been working to support through our Manufacturing Jobs Fund, and we've got a new tax credit for manufacturing in our new budget that's helping exactly that, to help businesses pivot.
Okay.
It's so interesting that you talked about a project or report that you worked on before. When I was in college, I did a business plan on exporting value-added lumber, but in log houses to Japan.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, wow, that's such a good idea. And it was a good idea.
Yeah.
And then you just see that was 30 some odd years ago or 40 years ago. I'm going to be it was almost 40 years ago that I did that. And disappointed with how haven't moved, and I think a lot of the concerns I have about where we're going and what we've done is there's all these great ideas have existed for a long time, and we've been distracted by probably I can use this term, the cocaine of having
the ease of
You
that market. And I think
Yeah.
that's been so much of our trade. It's just so easy to just export to the south, and for American branch plants to be in here just sending stuff to the south. And so although I know, particularly in forestry, that a lot of harm has been done by Trump's tariffs and the war on our softwood lumber, it has been devastating for communities. But it does, all of this moment right now geopolitically does create a moment for us to talk about how do we do things differently. It's suddenly made it so that we have a moment to stop and think about what do we do to pivot, and so that's the positive, the sort of the silver lining, and the interprovincial trade piece too, which I was at that federal table, interprovincial trade, and people said they'd seen movement at that table that for, like as you said, why was it taking so long? It was just so much faster than it's ever been in terms of agreements to move goods back and forth across the country. So it is a terrible moment for many, but it is also a moment where we have that opportunity to move things quickly. A disrupt moment allows us to disrupt things and do things differently.
With that interprovincial trade, has there been actual action taken place, or has there been a lot of meetings? Like what has changed there?
Yeah, I mean, just I think last week or the week before, we had a new bill announced by Minister Callon about that really kind of formalizes a bunch of the talks we've had at that table to move goods back and forth. And BC's been a champion. We were leading that table. A lot of provinces were saying, okay, well, we'll recognize other people's goods if they recognize ours, or we'll work with this one province and sign a deal. And what we were doing was saying, we are at the table, and we were leading the federal table on this. We're at the table to get everyone to recognize everyone's goods. We want every province at the table here. We want to move goods back and forth. We don't want to have a bunch of one-off side agreements. We want to do this nationally.
Yeah. And so you're seeing some progress
Absolutely.
on that front?
Yeah, we've got some good agreements signed.
Yeah.
So
I think that disruption piece, like, it's really easy to criticize, well, we've got our largest trading partner. We don't want to disrespect them and all this kind of language, but really it's held us back. And it's also held us back from accessing not only our provincial markets from the internal standpoint, but external markets from Europe, Australia, Asia, all these other markets that because we've been so dependent on the United States, and it really exposes us to be abused by them as well. So we can't be prisoners to it. We need to call out bad behavior. We need to defend our sovereignty and our rights. And all of that to me is connected, because you can have business without certainty, but you also can't grow new opportunities without making some changes. And also understanding, like, I think a lot of people get in this rhetoric about climate action and the cost of it and these carbon taxes. And as much as I'm an advocate for climate action, and all my businesses are carbon neutral and I believe in it, I was really against the carbon tax because I just didn't think it did what it should have done or it could have done. But I also think that it's also done a disservice to everybody too, because you get caught up with this carbon tax, all this idea, but without recognizing that you need to do a bunch of things in order to do business with other countries that are looking at the world in a different way, and not just the way, an industrial sort of carbon sink or user that the United States does. And for us too, like we burn a lot of carbon, but tying it into the bigger picture is important, but decreasing that resistance, like we need to make the change for ourselves, right? So yeah, I'm excited about that idea.
I guess we are at an opportunity where it is time, or it's a good opportunity to break things a bit and make them better and build back better. And I don't know, from a person who actively doesn't want to watch the news anymore, I used to be such a news junkie, and I'm just not anymore. I'm not hearing about the ideas that are coming out from Canada or the province, and I'm wondering if there's something you can tell me that'll make me feel better.
He wants a hug.
Yeah, I do. I need a provincial hug, saying, here's what we expect to happen, and here's our plan, like a concrete plan to make things a little better for everyone.
Yeah, and I think I love that you've asked that question, because it is. I'm really excited about the record we have of what we've been doing and what we're about to do. And as I said, we are on the biggest number of projects on the list of the federal government for major projects. BC, as we face this geopolitical moment, BC is the gateway to the Pacific. We have so much of what the world needs right now are critical minerals, and we have reduced permitting time by over a third. Like, we are able to move projects forward so much faster right now. Our government's done that work. We've created automated processes in permitting. It used to be you go through this sequence and you bump up against something here and you start all the way back at the beginning, horribly frustrating processes, right? That would take years and years. We've layered that. We've moved the reconciliation forward in strategies where, like the land use agreement up there, where it gives the certainty for the mines and the nation so they can move forward, and then we can fast track those projects. So we're reducing permitting times dramatically. We're doing things like a doctor or a nurse coming in from the U.S. Can start within weeks, not months. That kind of fast tracking and reducing timelines. So we're doing it in so many areas because we know that we need to make it easier to do business. That's the kind of break it to fix it thing that we can do right now, is we have the opportunity to say, no, we've got to do things differently. And that's leading to economic growth. Like our critical minerals, we've never seen the kind of exploration we're happening in mining. The projects, we're fast tracking major projects. You see announcements so regularly now coming about a new project, new mine going forward. Our wind and solar, like we have had 2 successful rounds of new projects announced, and the investment coming in for that. When the U.S. shut down the clean energy sector and the clean power and everything, that was an opportunity for us to bring that investment here, and we are. Nurses and doctors want out. We're attracting them here. The tech sector, we are still in the top 4 tech sectors in North America. We're investing in that sector. We created a training center with Castle Training Center, and as I said, we've got the manufacturing tax credit. We're really looking at being at the table with our business sector as we face this economic moment to situate BC as a place with really well planned growth that's going to support the community. So we know to deliver the services and programs people need, so they can go out to local businesses and buy their coffees and get their haircuts and everything. We know that relies on a strong economy, and to do that, our government has to be driving that today, because they, like you said, businesses and economies don't like uncertainty, and that's why our government has to be the certainty. We have, from the first day of Trump's tariffs, we said we're at the table with the sector. We're going to be continuing to lean into economic growth with that support, and while we support our programs and services that we need today, and that's what our budget does.
So, speaking to the budget, I think the Board of Trade came out and they said they're not happy with the budget, and it's anti-business and all those things. So part of the messaging story, like you looking for that warm blanket of comfort, is there a messaging issue on some of these items?
Yeah, I'm so surprised with that, because in fact, we have a new fund in the budget that's a strategic investment fund that we were asked by business. They said, it's constantly hard to be able to be at the table with the federal government and other investors when we don't have equity to put it on the table. And we had grants, but very limited amount of money to give away. But if we're investing, that's a different type of money. That's a return for the taxpayer. We're at the table as an investor. And the federal government, they go to Ontario and Quebec all the time. And Ontario and Quebec are putting up money all the time as equity. And they put equity. They don't put grants. Big amounts. And they're at the table with the feds. And they're leveraging so much money. And BC needs to be at the table. And so we put that up with a new fund. And that's just about ensuring that we continue to build the investment plan and leverage the federal money that our businesses need to get, that we can't get if the government's not at the table. They require a cost share, and that we pony up. So some things like that. And the manufacturing tax credit. credit that we just put in. So many pieces of this. We continue to have the smallest, amongst the lowest small business taxes in the country, and we lowered those after the Liberals. When we got in, we lowered that below where the Liberals had it. We have been there at the table because 98% of our businesses are small businesses. So
That was gonna be my
yeah,
next
so we
question,
lowered the
Chrissy.
taxes for small businesses because we know, and I had a small business, I know how tight those margins are, especially post-pandemic with supply chains and cost increases. So we kept hydro costs lower for small businesses. We brought in the small business venture capital tax credit that we made it so more accessible to more businesses, raised the thresholds for access to that so more could access it. And so we've really been working to be at the table with small business as well.
Do you guys need to hire a new PR person or like social media manager or something?
I know.
You know, and when you look at social media and all these, you know, control over the algorithms and feeding people information and selecting what people see and hear on there, it's like, because I just like it's really a full-time job for somebody like me even to decipher.
I know. It's a challenge these days. Like, you know, I have to say, like, we have Maple MAGA in the legislature. We have somebody stood up yesterday in our house, a private member, it stood up and said we should abolish the Human Rights Code. Like, we have people doing that in our legislature right now. It's Maple MAGA. It's whipping up a right-wing base. It's misinformation. And it's being driven by particular interests. And that undermines everybody's access to really good information.
Yeah.
Misinformation is being put out there regularly about what we're doing. And it's being driven by very particular interests. And it's that's going to be a real challenge going forward because, and this is back to where we started, right? With the social media platforms and the AI, like where does the responsibility sit for misinformation?
Yeah.
And how do we access people directly to ensure that they have accurate information?
That's a good question. How do you do that? I mean, we're not the experts here. How do you overcome?
Like, how far can we go? Like, you know, do we? I mean, and there's talk because Mark Carney and the Europeans. I know France has removed from the government Google and Zoom and all this stuff. And you've got these sort of oligarchy managers of Meta with Zuckerberg and Bezos with Amazon and Musk with Twitter or X. And they literally can control the information that people are seeing. They directly benefit from it. Yeah. The government is supposed to be protecting the interests of the people. But when their alignment is missed or they're not, if we don't have a coordinated effort, especially when it comes to Canadian sovereignty, and that's where I come, like, it really bothers me. And I spend 2 months a year, I did 2 months a year in the United States playing poker. But yeah, I spend a significant amount of money every year down there.
I did not know that about you. Learning things on this podcast, eh?
Well, I'm not going anymore, but I had.
Going to Monaco.
To the local casino now.
Well, no,
spend your dollars locally. It's nationalism, sovereignty.
Do not gamble, folks. Do not gamble. Don't recommend it.
I hear Macau has some nice.
Yes, I guess I'm going to.
But back to what you're saying around. So there's a couple of things. One is on the data and sovereignty piece. Our government has ensured and it's continuing to ensure that we have data hosted here in Canada and here in British Columbia. And I'm really proud of something our government just did, which has said, you know, there's two types of AI right now and data. There's like what I call extractive, like the metas that are going to take your information and use it for a profit over somewhere overseas where the money never gets seen in Canada. And there's local companies and businesses, like you said, using AI to get their business moving, to help, with their payroll or, small businesses where it helps reduce overhead, or the government where it helps us to do things like predict wildfires faster. Like we can use AI to help predict wildfires. But for us, that it's important to have that hosted locally. And so we said only a small portion of our electricity grid is accessible for AI and data. Yeah. So the metas and stuff can't just come in and use up all of our clean power. We've limited it, and it has to be sovereign. It has to be secure. It has to create jobs in BC. It has to be clean power, and it has to be responsible. And so we've worked with, like, it has to be, serving a public, the public in some ways. We're really driving an AI where it's being prioritized because they have to bid on it. There's only so much power allowed, and they're bidding on who gets access to that. And we're using some criteria to assess who gets in and who doesn't. And we're one of the only jurisdictions that's doing that. And it's a careful way to ensure that, in the U.S. we're seeing them lots of people are talking about this. They're sucking up all the power and all the water, right? The other thing ours is sustainable. It has to be conserving the water.
Yeah.
You can use water in a nice closed loop where the heat goes into a greenhouse or a district heating. So conserving water, being secure and sovereign. So we're doing that, and that's very different from what other jurisdictions are doing. And we've said we don't want to take advantage of this industry. We don't want that industry here that's harvesting people's data for profit. We want to use AI responsibly in BC and in our government and in our communities. But so that's a different approach, and I'm really proud of us doing that. So that talks to the security and the data piece.
Yeah.
But the other piece is, of course, individuals will be using those platforms. Yeah. And even just on intimate images, our government's been fighting with the platforms and with the feds to get people's personal intimate images that are being shared without their permission. And even on that, having the platforms, they won't even agree to pull somebody's image off that's being shared. So there's a real uphill battle there in terms of finding some kind of accountability with the platforms.
I think it requires vertical integration with the different governments as well. Like, you have to have a united force. Mm-hmm. You can't be just this voice in the darkness doing it. And that speaks to a lot of these issues too, because when you have this shift and this rupture and this language, which I think is completely appropriate and speaks to the moment. And that's what I liked about, regardless of what political side you're on or whatever, Mark Carney's speech at Davos.
That was a great speech.
Because it does. And I think it resonates because it's real.
Yeah.
And we knew we were living in a lie.
Yeah.
So now we know it's a lie. Let's not live in it anymore so that we can actually get on with the business at hand.
And we know I think he gave us the moment to be able to say it isn't business as usual anymore.
Yeah.
And everybody felt that, but he put it into words. So it does give us the opportunity. We do work closely with the federal minister of AI, Evan Solomon, and Melanie Joly and other folks at the federal level around the AI strategy work. And I'm also, of course, working closely with our privacy commissioner's office and the human rights commissioner. And I'm meeting with them soon around AI and really looking at what do we do, how are we protecting people's privacy, and my ministry has worked closely with the privacy commissioner's office to ensure people's data is protected, and we will continue to look at how we do that in this new and such fast changing environment. It's changing at the pace of AI, and soon it'll be changing at the pace of quantum.
Yeah. Dude.
So, I know.
That's a lot.
But I had that conversation with the privacy commissioner, which is like, we have to make sure that we're creating a policy environment where we can be nimble as it evolves, rather than saying, like, we've got it all fixed with this one bill, we're going to fix it all. That's why it's a conversation, is how do we create a framework within which we can protect people, but evolve it as AI evolves.
Well, and I think that's the key to this whole thing, is when you look at, and this kind of speaks to the overall frustration of these 4-year election cycles, and you just get whipped up, and then you've got to coalesce your base and tell a story and all this kind of narrative that doesn't work when you're dealing with these ruptures, these big things. And to me, like, protecting people's privacy, protecting people in general from corporations or abuse, like, there's no excuse. Like, I can understand why, as a business owner, I'd want as much latitude and freedom to develop my ideas and pursue my wealth and all that kind of stuff in a vacuum. But we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a community of people that need to be cared for, and good governments care for their people. Bad governments don't. So, the importance of having that in mind first, and then worrying about where other people's interests, like, once the people's interests are protected, then you can look at, okay, well, how does this work for corporations?
Yeah.
Because they're only there on the behest and the desire and the demand of the people.
Yeah.
Every single one of these corporations could be defunded now, and some of them are, by protest.
Yeah, by citizens saying they're not acting in a way that serves. If they violate the public need and interest enough, they will be stopped. And I think, that's what our government's approach has been, is really the investment we're bringing in. We've always said is in order for us to deliver healthcare, education, the services people need across our province, is about ensuring that we have the the vibrant, diverse economy we need to be able to support everyone. That's what the businesses are doing. They're helping to create the jobs and the economic growth and the investment climate and the dynamism, the talent pipelines that allow us to be able to serve people in all the different ways we need to.
With healthcare being talked about there and the privacy issues, how and in investment in large companies, how does a company like TELUS take over so much of our healthcare front line aspects of our healthcare, and how do we guarantee that TELUS just doesn't have all our information anymore? Like that's a real concern to me. I don't want to deal with TELUS when it comes to my healthcare. I want to deal with my government and my doctor. And I don't trust
Doctor first, right?
the doctor first. Doctor first. But
I'd love to help you, but
Diana, time for my checkup.
But the doctors are going to be funded by the government because we don't have yet a private healthcare system. But it really feels like that's where we're going by having large companies like TELUS, of all people, a communications information gathering company, gathering all our healthcare information. Have you got anything to soothe me?
Well, I can tell you that I worked for many years advocating for a public health system, and have had concerns with a private for-profit involvement in the health system in the past. So I understand your concerns. What we have right now is with the shortage of healthcare professionals, and just with an aging demographic, we also have much higher needs. So that new technologies, aging demographic, retiring, and global shortage of health professionals, we are trying to fill that gap. We are working to fill it with. We have right now the most doctors and nurses we've ever had, and nurse practitioners, but we still need more. And that's why we're doing things like fast tracking them from the U.S. That's why we opened the first medical clinic in 50 years, medical school for training GPs, and more seats for nurse practitioners. So our goal is that you have a GP that you go to, and TELUS Health isn't meant to replace that. It's a stopgap. We're working to ensure people have access in any way we can at the moment while we get the pieces in place that give you the services you deserve.
But once we have those services and the people, then we don't need TELUS.
Well, we would do an assessment at that point. Yeah,
you provide guardrails to protect the.
Yeah, but the data is protected. That's what the Privacy Commissioner's Office does, is they make sure we've got the protocols in place that if someone's data is collected for one use, they can't use it for anything else. And there was a recent study that came out from the Privacy Commissioners around health professionals that were looking at data that was from something else. They can't. The purpose of the data that it was collected for is the only thing that data can be used for. And if that's monitored, and if people use it for another purpose, there's a violation that can go to the Privacy Commissioner. So with health data in particular, we've really worked to make sure there's guardrails so your data is well protected. But I hear you in terms of that's not the person you want to go to. So I know that people who are in remote communities, we're getting high-speed internet we've already covered 97% of households across the province have high-speed internet. And that's where telehealth is most valuable, is sometimes we just won't be able to offer full-scale services or get a doctor to live in a small remote community. Sometimes it's just really hard, even with all the bonuses. Yeah. And those are the folks that are going to need to be served by things like that. So as we continue to build out our system and ensure people have access to services, we'll continue to fill the gaps the way we need to. The biggest priority, like you said, is people-centered, making sure services are there for people that need them. But we are fully committed to the universal public health system and continuing to ensure it's there for people.
Good. And I don't have an opportunity to talk to many politicians in my life, so you're going to have to
bring it. I want to hear it all.
I believe,
none of these questions have been vetted.
No. Well, this is good. You can catch you off guard. And you may or may not have an answer, which is totally cool. I've always thought that wouldn't it be good for our healthcare system to offer everyone in our province the ability to go become a doctor for free, and you pay for that service by going to remote communities and serving your time like they do in the army. They'll pay for your education, but you're kind of trapped in the contract with them. Why wouldn't that be a really easy
Sam Jones,
solution
2028
for our province and our country, really?
Yeah, and I know that we do already offer like locums. They do get help with their student loans and things like that. I know that we've got all sorts of programs to try and attract people to the rural and remote communities. Part of it is that there's a shortage, so we need them everywhere. And it's hard to say, you know, there's a hospital that's got an emergency closing in one place and there's a remote community somewhere else. Like, where is that doctor going to be most needed?
The fires are
everywhere. So right now it's really like there's a lot of opportunity for us to attract doctors. And so we do have some of those incentives, but there's lots more to do. And I know that our health minister is looking at any ideas that come up that they can use. But right now there isn't, you know, as soon as there's enough doctors in a lot of those urgent care places, then we'll be filling
move up the next level.
We'll be filling them all with as many incentives as we can.
Well, and I don't want to harp on this at
You're
all, but
on it.
I'm harping on it, and I will for a minute. But with that idea of educating doctors for free, that takes away the stigma that you have to come from a certain class to even think about,
Barriers to
I
entry,
want to be a doctor. Most people who are super capable, super smart, and might have brilliant ideas are dissuaded because of the costs.
Yeah.
And if you open it up to everyone, not all of them are going to graduate, because not all of them will, but the smart ones and the good people will graduate, and they'll have to go to all those remote communities. Yeah. And because you'll have a lot of people now who are going to say, oh, you mean I can be a doctor?
I had someone in my office just today that was talking about her mom. She's a student, and her mom put herself through medical school while bartending with 3 kids in childcare. Yeah. And the childcare was subsidized on campus. She was bartending, and she put herself through medical school and became a doctor. And you know, that's the world we want to be in, is where you can put your kid through. So you can have kids and have a part-time job and put yourself through medical school. We need to get there.
And support the different layers, because the childcare piece is an important.
That's another piece too.
You know, the education and access and availability and affordability is a piece.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of doctor I want. I want a doctor who put themselves through school by being in the hospitality industry.
Totally.
Yeah. We need people.
Because you learn how to be a better person by being in the hospitality industry.
Oh, it's so critical. And so many people get their experience with it.
Yeah.
I've got to follow up because it's pertinent to my life. So without going into details, so I love the idea of nurse practitioners and expanding that opportunity. I think nurses play such an integral role in the healthcare system. And in a lot of cases, they are very knowledgeable. They see it firsthand, how different things present. But, you know, there's a nurse practitioner that's working in a private clinic somewhere, cannot do the same things unless she's working in a medical clinic. She has the exact same ability. She can write a prescription over here, but she can't write a prescription over there, or it's for pay. So the blood work doesn't get covered on this side, but the blood work get covered over here. But then she's got capacity issues, perhaps, or he's got capacity issues. So how do we make it, if somebody is a nurse practitioner, that they can port their ability to deal with customers where they, or not customers,
Patients, yeah.
That's, see, what a Freudian slip.
It is.
Because it becomes customers on one side.
It feels like it. Yeah, it feels like it. So, you know, there's always been this tension in our medical system with the private versus public, and there is the ability to opt out of MSP and opera services, but you cannot be an MSP doctor and also bill privately. You have to be one or the other. And so we are really working to build that out within, and we're still short nurse practitioners in the public system, and we really want to ensure that they're incented to work in the public system.
Why do we, okay, this is the conflict, because my wife had a conflict with it, like a moral conflict when she was going, because, you know, she's fortunate enough to be able to afford to pay what was required to do it. But she's like, why, if I go over here and she's having a bit of problems with her GP, in being able to get the access to
The appointments and stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's appointments, and it's also an understanding she's pre or perimenopausal, and not everybody has all of that has changed a lot. I know the province has introduced some coverage in that.
Yeah,
front
we've
with
just
menopause,
got it.
which is
Yeah,
fantastic.
HRT is getting insured, publicly insured, which is great, and I think that'll help with really bringing more of a culture of serving people well in the medical system. But I think that's a good thing for me to take away with me. Is to take back to the health ministry is really that there's still that tension in terms of being able to serve women that are going through menopause, and I know what you're talking about, and I think it does speak to that. Again, that balance of supporting our universal healthcare system. And, as soon as people start taking their dollars outside, the doctors leave the public system and the waits go way up and the services go way down. So we do need to continue to ensure that we've got the mechanisms to protect it while people get access to the services they need. We would want to see those services offered inside the public health system for your wife so that she gets well served that way.
But isn't there a hybrid too? Isn't there an ability for a nurse practitioner to issue, she can issue for a fee, she can issue prescriptions and she can do her medical advice and give proper patient care within her private portfolio, but she has to charge $1,500 to get the blood work so that she can do the assessment and do that. So
only if she's in the private system, in the public system.
That's what I'm getting at. So she can do, but she can just walk across the street into the clinic and do all of that in the public system.
And again, it's because we have a shortage of healthcare practitioners, and as soon as people can go and bill in the private system, they're gonna. And then you end up having all of our doctors and nurses moving to that where they're serving the wealthy.
Why isn't
and not everyone else?
But okay. Because I just think this is important. I know this isn't your portfolio.
Yeah, it's true.
So I'm gonna do
the health minister can be like, Diana, stay in your lane.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna and so we acknowledge that this isn't your portfolio.
We're driving in different.
But you're very smart, and you travel in those circles. So help me understand a little bit. So when she is in the clinic, and that's technically the public system, she's at a clinic that performs Botox, and they've got a naturopath there and a massage therapist and all this kind of stuff. So they're doing a whole bunch of for-profit services that are outside of that. She's seeing a patient. She's charging a fee for that visit. All of that is fine. When it comes to accessing the public benefit of getting blood work done that can fall into that system, why isn't it just as simple as her to have a license and the actual lab work gets flown through the system because it's for benefit, and then the patient doesn't need to, I guess in that case it's a client, doesn't need to have that moral judgment of we're in, because it's also a breach of the Canada Health Act in some aspects, is everybody needs access and fair, and then all of a sudden now it's just a real
and I think I can certainly take that particular case away, because I know you're speaking about kind of navigating menopausal issues and stuff like that is something that's an emerging area, and I'll take that away with me for sure. But I can say that the basic, and sometimes it's a blunt instrument, the basic principles of how that system was designed was to protect the universal healthcare system, because we've seen in the U.S. as soon as they start being able to practice for profit, the doctors go there, they'll give people tests they maybe don't need because they'll be willing to pay for it. People who really need that test can't get it. The wait lists go way up. It starts to cost.
So it's an oversight issue as far as what's being done privately versus publicly?
That's the basic tenets of how our healthcare, how our universal healthcare system is protected. Is as soon as you get two-tier, the top tier grows and the other tier suffers. And, that you're talking about, it's already there.
It's already
there. So that's something
what's concerning.
Yeah, so that's something I can take away is how that's working in terms of those clinics, and it's something that I've been thinking about too. So I really appreciate you raising it, and I hear you on being able to ensure that people who need that service, and it's an MSP covered service, are getting it. Yeah. So that's certainly, and I say it's a bit of a blunt instrument because it's designed when you create something that the system's designed to be protected here. So we say no to everything over here as compared to some nuance. That might be where it sits, but that's what the kind of the reasons it exists. But that doesn't mean it. Like I said, that it's
there can't be an improvement or
that we could look at how that's being done. So let me
give a basic set of services like the blood work stuff and the perimenopausal
stuff
and can be addressed but then if you're looking for to get your testosterone checked or something that is beyond that, then obviously you can isolate that and not cover it. But I think there's a capacity that could be done as a hybrid. And it does. I think the system, the way it sets, risks our healthcare system greater than if you allow some leeway so that capacity could be expanded. Nurse practitioners are allowed to work in a private and also a public setting, in the sense that they can access the patients in a similar way, and we as a citizen get the benefit of it.
Yeah, and our goal right now is to, like I said, to leverage every tool we have to ensure citizens right now are getting the healthcare services they need. So really looking at leaving no stone unturned. So continue while we protect the universal public healthcare system, so that you can get a doctor without having to worry about paying, or any medical service without having to worry about paying, that is covered by MSP. So continuing, but it's a great conversation for us to continue having. And I know, like I said, we're looking at leaving no stone unturned. So thank you.
I like it. I like that we're coming up with some challenging questions too.
Do companies like Life Labs, are they 100% private companies, and do they charge the province for profit for those tests that
now you're starting to get into it?
Exactly.
Like I can't.
We'll let you off the hook on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar enough with those contexts. So yeah, we're starting to get too far out of my lane.
But maybe this might be in your lane, because I know it affects my businesses when it comes to EHT. So I know that was a change that the government made before your time, but I kind of have a thing about it with, and I don't know, I'm not even going to go here, but it is an added burden for small business. I know my business, I think we spend $50,000 a year on employer health tax that we didn't have prior to the change.
I believe we lifted the threshold on that for small businesses.
It made a bit of a difference, but we still are above the. And
you're above
for
it.
us.
I know.
You know what I mean? But
that's one of those Pyrrhic victories of like, yay, we grew past the threshold.
Yeah.
Oh, now we have to pay so much.
Still in the restaurant industry, with no matter how big you are, your profit margins are always slim.
Yeah, our profit margins still like 2-3%.
A huge restaurant.
Totally.
Slim profit margins.
I know. And particularly in the hospitality and the restaurant, and I know the restaurant sector, particularly with food prices the way they are.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The margins, employees, living wage employers, particularly 100%. Like wanting to do right by the workers, but being squeezed so tightly. Yeah. And I know that coffee, any kind of service sector and hospitality and restaurant, I know those margins are so tight. So that's why we've been, that's why we brought that small business tax down. That's why we've been focusing on keeping hydro costs low for businesses, particularly small businesses. But we're very aware of that.
It'd be nice for some policy to be geared towards the margin, like what's the average margin in the restaurant industry? It's 3 to 4%. What's the average margin in oil and gas or mining? 12 to 18%. And then factoring in where those thresholds start. Yeah. Because when you look at the profit, and I'm not like, I access healthcare, and my thought on that as far as it affected me is that, say my business makes $150,000 a year. So and that's on $9 million in sales. So now I'm spending $50,000 of that $150,000 on a healthcare tax, which is still a tax. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel like I have free Medicare, right? I have a partner, which is a third partner, which is just specific on this one tax issue. When I also look at a mine, maybe I have 200 employees. There's a mine that has 200 employees, but their margin is 15%. So they have a 2% partner or 5% partner in that tax portion.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, in this day and age of AI and data, it's really easy to kind of figure out where those thresholds lie, so that you can then prosper as a business. Because I would be happy to pay a fair portion of that relative to how much money we're making or in the industry. So that's something to take back.
I will.
I
will. I'm making a note of that right now.
Make a note of that.
And I know you're not in the transportation industry, but ministry, sorry, but I just thought.
Okay, so we prepped all these questions, and now you're just hitting me.
We're just going.
Well, you're doing really great.
We'll reel it back in.
I just thought of a way to reduce food costs on Vancouver Island, and that's to use BC ferries as free transportation for cargo on and off Vancouver Island, because it's part of our national highway system. And
So
wouldn't it be
you're talking
great-
about expanding BC ferries
well,
because we're
Yeah.
they're at capacity already.
Well, they
Well,
are.
all
They are already
the
transporting.
barges,
Yeah, they're already transporting the food. You're talking about
Yeah,
making it so
making-
that
making that
we exempt,
free.
food
Exempt
transportation
food.
from. That's it.
Yeah.
Again, I made a note of that.
Yeah, that's actually
That's a really good
That
idea.
is a really good idea.
I know. That's why I know you're not transportation, but it's a good idea. And you
good
might know
idea.
someone.
Yeah.
This well, there's food security is obviously an issue
Yeah.
too, and supporting. I mean, you were at our event at Fed, their urban
Yeah.
agriculture, and the challenges in trying to create a system, and it's basically social enterprise. Farming is effectively a social enterprise because it's
Yeah.
really hard to make money.
It's really
doing
hard
it.
to make money doing it. After the
there's a-
restaurant, before the restaurant industry, I
Yes.
think it's probably the
Oh.
margins are so much tighter there. Yeah.
But it's a critical
Yeah.
area,
Yeah.
and for
Huge.
sovereignty.
Yeah.
Because we still have to spend 20% of our budget on
Yeah.
food in the US to get lettuce, tomatoes, and those types of things. So
Yeah.
I really want the provincial government to
Mhm.
be working with the federal government on really a food security piece.
Yeah.
We grow 10% of the food we use on the island. 30 years ago, we used to do 40%.
Yeah.
Getting that up, supporting, social enterprises and nonprofits, as well as consistent farmers.
Yeah, and biotech agritech. Like
Yes.
I was at Green Tech in Amsterdam, which is where all the agritech kind of internationally comes together, and I just saw such incredible innovation that helps farmers with automatic kind of measuring the heat and the temperatures in the irrigation and really targeting things to the plants that they need, or vertical farming where we could do
Yeah.
it like in a parking lot beside the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I know companies that are developing that technology with robots and things that can develop and grow microgreens and even right through to larger plants
And making sure they're nutritious.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're
That's the other
nutritious.
thing, yeah.
They're grown in a way we've got so much more ability to control what's going in terms of nutrients, and it's a circular system that's
Yeah.
environmentally friendly,
Yeah.
and like there's just so much we can do right now. And so our government's also been investing in the innovation side to help the farmers we do have to be able to do it more efficiently and also grow more with less.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
So I think that was just the one question that came from
It was,
our
that's-
AI.
So far.
Well,
but it was-
there was 100 questions. Only the first question
Yeah,
was AI.
yeah.
I think we've decided that
No, I
AI
think our
questions aren't as good as human
Our own,
questions.
no, for sure, because of that human
Yeah.
component. And also, I love how it was a great conversation starter.
Mm-hmm.
One piece as it ties into the Firelight Group, downtown business. So speaking to the downtown small business, Victoria in particular,
Yeah.
because obviously we have all businesses in the downtown Victoria. Safety is an issue, homelessness, housing, the integration where the city needs to work with the province, it needs to work with the feds.
Totally.
And that advocacy piece
Yeah.
that actually makes change.
Yeah.
And I know your husband's Dave Thompson, who was on here a little while ago, and he's a city councillor. So we've posed questions to him as well. Is there, how do you feel about what's happening downtown, and how can the province facilitate and better support not just our community, but in
Yeah.
particular our community,
Yeah.
but
all
other
around the
communities?
province.
Yeah.
There's so many pieces of that. It's a great question. I mean, my business was started downtown in Market Square. Now it's
Yeah.
a national company, but it started right out of Market Square. I would bike in there every day. Well, not every day. Okay.
Yeah. Politician caught on a lie on a podcast.
Sorry, right there. Here's a photo of Diana driving to work.
Exactly.
Okay, I biked in there as much as I could. But I loved having a business downtown. Really, really loved it. But I understand some of the challenges. And so it does take all levels of government. And I've been really impressed with the championing that Marianne Alto, the mayor of Victoria, has been doing with the municipal community safety plan. Also with the new police chief, or a chief that's really ready to be at the table to work collaboratively to do this work together. And that's making a huge difference. People are really commenting about that from, both inside the police force and out in the community. And then government investment. And so the provincial government's been investing through the chronic property offending intervention, a new program we just got in this budget, because we know businesses have been struggling with vandalism And we worked really hard federally to get, and this goes to the federal level, the bail reform issue and getting repeat violent offenders caught so that we don't have this revolving door. But we need that for nonviolent offenders as well.
Yeah.
And we've been working to get that reform federally so that repeat nonviolent offenders also can be kept, and so that we don't just have them back out on the street the next day. So we're working with them on that, and we hear there's progress being made. And we recognize that kind of nonviolent disruption and property crime. But we've also been working on, of course, the continuum of housing. So we know that this has to be done in a way that's compassionate and thoughtful. And that's why we've been building. We've ramped up housing with Threshold and others. Our Place. We've got multiple different providers offering treatment beds and social housing and non-market, and with incredible non-market housing providers like the Greater Victoria Housing Society and Pacifica and the Capital Region, building non-market housing. So those are all the pieces that are helping to solve that problem too, and it needs to be tackled from. And of course, there's also some folks that need to be held that are not able to live in that housing and shouldn't be on the street, and that's another piece that we've been working
the mental health piece,
Totally.
which again falls in the provinces.
And we just introduced a new program called Health IM that's working with the police and the health officials so that data can be shared in a way that protects privacy but allows people to be served better. And it already is showing benefits in other places in terms of reduced emergency times, better service for the mental health for the people that need it, and the police being able to be back on the street instead of sitting in emergency. So we've introduced that program here, and everybody's really excited about the results that it'll show.
Yeah, and I guess sorry, Sam.
It's okay.
That's also the marketing kind of piece of it too. Of like hearing some of these stories is refreshing. I've seen it firsthand, but just communicating, right? So that change is happening. These problems didn't take a year to fix or to create, so it's not going to take a year to fix either.
But I know Sam can speak to this. Like, I'm hearing from businesses that it is making a difference. The recent really big changes with the new police chief, with the Mayor Alto's initiative, and the province's investments, that is the trifecta that's starting to make a difference. I don't know if you're starting to see that downtown.
I'm not seeing like a clear cut where it's
there's a line
to improve, right? I'm assuming it is going to improve, but having I don't understand the program that the police have now, that they get more information about the individual that they're about to approach. They got their background history, so they know how to approach them, is my understanding.
Maybe not in advance, because they might not know who they're approaching. But if they're involved with someone and they're thinking about whether they're going to do a hold with them, or they're going to take them to emergency to be taken in, or what they're going to do. That's where that information helps them decide. Oh, well, this person has a place where a care worker here that's got them, or they've just been released on a medical order and they should be taken back. There's a bed for them and they need to be going back in, or there's lots of different pieces there with the health that they can see like where that person's at, and they can work with the health system around what the best service for that person is. If they're going to because often they take them in, they sit and emerge, and then they're not going to be held anyway. They're back in the community. It doesn't serve anyone, and it traumatizes that person as well. It's not a good experience for them to be going in for that time with the police. So it minimizes the amount of time that they take people in that they don't need to. So it gives the police the ability to make an informed decision about whether, and a lot of the time our goal is to have a social worker with the police there, so that it's not about a police intervention. It's really about what does that person need right now, and that it gives them the information to help make that decision. What's the best way to support this person to be safe and well at that moment? And often that isn't going into emerge.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So are there going to be, or are there now more social workers on the beat with police, like it was maybe 20 years ago?
We do have teams like that, and I don't know more about what's going on with those. I can say that we do.
Fiona mentioned the police chief mentioned that there is, and they just started a patrol that does that. There's a foot patrol that does it.
Great.
they're integrated now, so that is a growing, and that's also about supporting the city, the budget.
Yeah.
Right. So she's put all those things are tied into the budget and making sure that the city can support that budget, and I think that's a paramount issue.
Yeah.
To be able to.
Yeah, because with that information that the police have about whoever it is and the best way to handle them, I think that's great. In conjunction with a real human
Absolutely.
who can understand.
Yeah.
And
that's why they're working. That's why they're
talking
working
about.
with the health system. I mean, the police don't want to be sitting there in emerge for 8 hours if they don't need to be. They want to be out on the street.
And it's really
too.
not. A lot of it is non-criminal behavior.
It's not. It's disruption. The person's having a crisis. So if they can serve them and keep them safe somewhere, it's in everybody's best interest for that person, including the police's, for that person to be best served. And that's why the police were at the table on developing this program, is because they really do want to ensure that the person's being met in a way that serves everybody. And what the data shows from elsewhere is that where they do need a health intervention under the Health IM program, they get better access to healthcare, because you're not taking people in that don't need it. You're taking people in that do, and you're taking them to the right health intervention. So that information makes sure that people are getting better health services. There's less time spent waiting in emergency, and police can do more of their job, and everybody's being better served.
Right. No, that's great. And how about mental health in general? Where is that going in the province? Because when you look at the homeless issues in Vancouver and Victoria, Prince George, and the drug issues that go along with that, there's this real mental health issue that happens. And no matter who you talk to, they always kind of point back to the time when the province emptied out their
deinstitutionalization. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're right. I mean, that was the origin of some of this. I mean, there are some people who can't live independently in a community safely, and that's why we've created some facilities and spaces for that. And we're looking at doing that in a way that is carefully managed in terms of the ethics of that, which is why we've got a special advisor reviewing how we do that in a way that doesn't overstep and is compassionate, and then building out all the other pathways. I don't. We don't want somebody going into involuntary care that actually wanted voluntary treatment. If people want voluntary treatment pathways, and we've been working to build out those pathways, and that's making a huge difference for people. And I know people from the street downtown Victoria, that have been picked up and put into programs elsewhere because there was a vacancy up in Cowichan or someplace, and it's great because they're being served really well in a community where they're a bit away from some of the challenges that they face, and some people really want to be out in a way where they can really recover. So there's opportunities like that, and we're working on making sure that those treatment opportunities are there. So we've been building that out. And that's a big part of our mental health investment. There's lots more to do, of course, and we've certainly seen that, we're not fully meeting those needs yet, and we know that, and continuing to build out the different pieces of the mental health community support services. One that I'm really proud of is the work we've been doing for youth programs with the Foundry, building that out across the province. It's a game changer for young people that can go to a safe place where they can engage with somebody who can understand their addiction challenges or their mental health challenges, whatever they're facing, and work with them to access the right services and supports, continuing to build programs like that.
Yeah, I think that's a very awesome program because it stops further trauma too. Yeah. So the actual stuff that they have to deal with on the street creates more trauma for them.
Yeah.
So if you get them at a younger age where they're actually meeting those good role models, and reminds me of somebody told me once, it just takes one person to make an impact on someone's life. Like they don't need 50 people necessarily, but if one person takes an interest,
at the right time,
it really can set the path differently. And obviously, hopefully families and communities can do that without needing government. But if government is viewing it in that way, I think it's a positive
And for
thing.
some people, their family and community isn't there for them on that journey.
Yes.
And that's where places like the Foundry are really a place where they can go. So that youth intervention level is such an important part. So we're building out that whole ecosystem, and we know that there's no one piece that's going to solve it all, but each of these pieces is part of helping to ensure that we're supporting people in community and have the institutional supports that are needed.
I love that. Now, because we're wrapping up, is there anything you want to share with us or discuss? Or we can't really discuss it in great detail, but
we've covered such a breadth of things. I don't even know.
It seems like you talked about every ministry except yours. However, I have notice that with all the issues we talked about, they all relate to people who need services, and that is your ministry.
It is, and I think we've talked about
points.
Yeah, I know he's right.
I got one. I got one a week.
This guy is so good.
I know he might hit me with all the hard questions.
Yeah.
But he just summed my ministry up beautifully. So, we're all good. I think you're right. I mean, it's really about centering people in how they get interacting with the mental health and addiction, centering people in healthcare, centering people in AI and data and privacy protection, like all of those. It's really about making sure that we're starting with centering the individuals and the community members and working from there.
Nice.
I love it. Diana, thank you for coming on our show. We got to have you on again.
I don't know.
Given
the breadth of questions, we were really Minister of Transportation would be like, Diana.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have you all on it.
Well, listen,
that's it. Get them on.
If you want to throw someone else down this path too and suggest them to come on if they want to talk about anything, we'd love to grill them.
Well, I really appreciate the questions. And to be honest, as an MLA, sorry, my mic's going on off. As an MLA, it is my job to represent the community to government as well. So, it's a two-way conversation where I'm here to sort of talk about what government's doing, but I'm always here to hear from community members about what they want to see. And our government is really open to right now. As you said, it's a disrupt moment. What can we do differently? We're super interested in engaging to hear that. And so anything from transportation through to healthcare to nurse practitioners. My job is to hear that and to take it forward and engage with you guys around that. So I love that you're bringing forward things as well. And I encourage anybody in the community that's interested in engaging with my office to do that around bringing forward suggestions and asking questions. That's what I'm here for.
How would they contact you?
Diana.gibson.mla@ledge.bc.ca. I'm looking at my staffer. I got five emails. Which one? Am I giving out the right email? Yeah, at diana.gibson.mla@ledge.bc.ca for inquiring about if you've got questions or if you've got suggestions or if you want to bring something forward. So I love this conversation. Super happy to keep talking about issues in our community.
It was great having you and being so clear in your communication where sometimes it doesn't feel like you get the straight goods. So I really appreciate you being
here. And your candor and taking all the questions.
Yeah. Well, this is called the Bread and Butter Collective, but we can call it the straight goods for today.
Yes.
I
have this thing with an event with my buddies. We call it Tell It Like It Is Tuesday, where
there
we all get to just tell the truth about each other or whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be about each other, but we cannot fluff. There's no blowing smoke up people's butts. It's just tell it like it is. So I like that.
And it all began by someone saying, I don't like Taco Tuesday.
Yeah,
right?
well, somebody said something and we just all looked, the other two guys looked at each other and were like, this is BS. Like, you can't do that. Like, and then all of a sudden it was a Tuesday and I'm like, yeah, let's have this tell it like it is. It's refreshing.
It's refreshing.
Because in this rupture, we just got to be honest with each other.
Yeah.
We do.
And let's just have the discussions, but let's come to the table as peers and community members. So we're not attacking each other and gaslighting each other.
No.
It's not zero sum. This isn't a sport.
No. And I feel like at this moment, we have this polarization happening in the legislature and in our community where people are dug in and get defensive. And for me, I want to talk to people from business, from social sector, from
all of it's related.
All of it, because we need to be able to meet people right where they are and hear what they want us to hear, and be able to talk directly to those issues. And that's what I want to do.
Well, thanks for meeting us where we are.
Yeah.
Check Studio.
I know, and
independent station.
Yeah, employee,
not oligarchy.
Yes, love that, and we need more of that kind of thing in our community. That's how we respond to this moment geopolitically: is local businesses, local initiatives, getting together, coming together, and building things together. So thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. That was
Thank
great.
you, Sam.
Oh,
I love you, man.
Love you too.
Remember to be real kind.
I will. You be really nice.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, Bunny's Kitchen, Buzz Coffee House, Eagle-Ite, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Eva Schnitzel House, Farmsgate Foods and Catering, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Nikkei Ramen Ya, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Keating Pizza, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, The Nimble Bar Company, Ruth and Dean, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, Spoon's Diner, Truffles-inspired catering, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.